What if the foods on your plate are quietly shaving away small pieces of your memory? So slowly you barely notice until names, appointments, or where you put your keys start slipping. That slow erosion doesn't always scream for attention. It accumulates through inflammation, metabolic stress, tiny blood vessel damage, and an unsettled gut microbiome. Over time, those invisible processes make it harder for neurons to talk to each other and for memories to stick. I'm going to count down the 10 food classes most often linked with those pathways, what they are, how they may harm memory, and simple swaps you can start today. If you care about your brain, subscribe for weekly evidence-based tips. 10. Processed high-sodium foods. Think canned soups, salty snack mixes, deli meats, and most fast food sides. Eating a lot of sodium without enough potassium shifts your fluid and electrolyte balance and can push up blood pressure. Chronically elevated pressure stresses the small blood vessels in the brain. Over years, this microvascular strain can reduce oxygen and nutrient delivery to regions important for memory, and it can promote low-grade inflammation that interferes with synaptic function. Swap in whole food seasonings. Use herbs, lemon, and potassium-rich vegetables like leafy greens and sweet potatoes to flavor food while supporting better electrolyte balance. 9. Fake coffee creamers and ultra-processed dairy-free creams. Those convenient powder or liquid creamers often hide emulsifiers, industrial trans fats, and a mix of refined oils and additives designed to stabilize and extend shelf life. Emulsifiers and certain processed fats can trigger intestinal irritation and change the microbiome, alterations that send inflammatory signals along the gut-brain axis. Additives may also promote systemic oxidative stress, which over time compromises neuronal membranes and signaling important for forming memories. Instead, choose plain milk or a minimally processed milk alternative like unsweetened oat or almond milk, or use a splash of real cream or MCT-rich coconut milk in moderation. 8. Excessive alcohol. A glass of wine occasionally isn't the same as chronic heavy drinking, but regular excess alcohol exposure interferes with memory through several routes. Alcohol dehydrates you and disrupts sleep architecture, two problems that impair memory consolidation. It also increases neuroinflammation and can damage mitochondria, the energy factories in neurons, making it harder for brain cells to maintain the high-energy processes memory requires. If you drink, aim for moderation and prioritize hydration and good sleep. Consider limiting nights of heavy intake and avoiding alcohol close to bedtime. 7. Healthy green smoothies that are overloaded or misbalanced. Green smoothies can be a great vehicle for nutrients, but when you load them with high oxalate greens like raw spinach, large amounts of nuts or seeds, and concentrated fruit sugars, they can create a different set of problems. High oxalate intake can overwhelm the gut's capacity to break it down in people who lack specific microbes. For example, Oxalobacter formigenes helps degrade oxalates, potentially promoting low-level gut irritation and systemic inflammation, processes that may indirectly affect brain health. Make smoothies that balance greens with low oxalate vegetables. Use whole fruit rather than fruit juice for fiber, and rotate ingredients to diversify your microbiome input. Now that you've heard a few surprising offenders, the next ones dig deeper into how modern processing and additives can hit metabolism and the brain more directly. 6. Artificial sweeteners and some non-nutritive sweeteners. These sugar substitutes are widely touted as zero-calorie solutions, but several of them have been associated with changes to the gut microbiome and to the way your body handles glucose and appetite signals. Microbiome shifts can affect the production of neurotransmitters and short-chain fatty acids that modulate brain inflammation and neuronal signaling. Some people also experience altered glucose tolerance after regular intake of sweeteners, which indirectly stresses the brain because neurons depend on a stable energy supply. If you're cutting back on sugar, prefer natural strategies. Reduce sweetness overall, use whole fruits for sweetness when possible, and, when needed, choose small amounts of natural sweeteners like stevia or monk fruit while paying attention to how your body responds. 5. Processed meats and cured meats with nitrites, nitrates, and advanced glycation end products AGEs. Hot dogs, many lunch meats, and certain smoked or cured products often contain additives and undergo high-temperature processing that creates compounds linked with vascular inflammation. Nitrites and AGEs can damage endothelial cells lining blood vessels and promote oxidative stress, both of which can reduce the efficiency of blood flow in the tiny cerebral vessels that support memory circuits. Choosing fresh, minimally processed protein sources, preparing meats at lower temperatures, and increasing plant proteins like beans or legumes are practical swaps. 4. Products with excess inorganic phosphate additives. Many packaged foods, from processed cheeses and sodas to some deli products, contain phosphate additives that are very different from the organic phosphates we get in whole foods. High intake of inorganic phosphates has been associated with vascular stress and endothelial dysfunction in experimental settings. And while the direct link to memory is not definitively proven, stressed cerebral blood vessels and disturbed mineral balance can impair the brain's microcirculation and promote calcific changes over time. 5. Processed meats and cured meats with nitrites, nitrates, and advanced glycation end products AGEs. Hot dogs, many lunch meats, and certain smoked or cured products often contain additives and undergo high-temperature processing that creates compounds linked with vascular inflammation. Nitrites and AGEs can damage endothelial cells lining blood vessels and promote oxidative stress, both of which can reduce the efficiency of blood flow in the tiny cerebral vessels that support memory circuits. Choosing fresh, minimally processed protein sources, preparing meats at lower temperatures, and increasing plant proteins like beans or legumes are practical swaps. 4. Products with excess inorganic phosphate additives. Many packaged foods, from processed cheeses and sodas to some deli products, contain phosphate additives that are very different from the organic phosphates we get in whole foods. High intake of inorganic phosphates has been associated with vascular stress and endothelial dysfunction in experimental settings. And while the direct link to memory is not definitively proven, stressed cerebral blood vessels and disturbed mineral balance can impair the brain's microcirculation and promote calcific changes over time. Favor fresh, whole foods. Read labels to reduce phosphate additives and eat a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, and natural proteins to keep mineral balance healthier. Before we get to the top 3, take a moment to understand the recurring mechanisms tying these foods to memory problems. 3 biological processes come up again and again: inflammation, oxidative stress, and vascular dysfunction. Inflammation signals and oxidized molecules can degrade synaptic function and interfere with memory consolidation. Oxidative stress damages neuronal membranes and mitochondrial function, reducing the energy neurons need. Vascular dysfunction, damage to the smallest blood vessels, starves brain tissue of oxygen and nutrients over years, particularly in regions like the hippocampus that are memory sensitive. The gut microbiome acts as a moderator. A balanced microbial community helps break down potentially harmful compounds, produces protective metabolites, and regulates systemic inflammation. Hydration, potassium-rich foods, and dietary diversity help these systems stay resilient, while processed additives, excess simple sugars, and damaged fats push them toward dysfunction. With that frame, the next 3 are the ones I see causing the most consistent, mechanistically plausible long-term harm. 3. Overuse of common over-the-counter NSAIDs and certain pain relief drugs. It's surprising to see a familiar household medicine on this list, but the concern is about chronic or heavy use paired with other risk factors. NSAIDs can alter renal filtration and, in some contexts, influence blood flow regulation and prostaglandin pathways that modulate vascular tone. That can have ripple effects on cerebral perfusion, how well blood is delivered across tiny capillary networks, especially in people with existing cardiovascular risk. Additionally, frequent NSAID use can mask symptoms that would otherwise prompt medical attention, delaying diagnosis of conditions that affect brain health. This is not a call to stop necessary medication. Rather, it's a reminder to use these drugs judiciously, discuss long-term pain strategies with a clinician, and explore non-pharmacologic pain management where possible. 2. Industrial seed oils and repeatedly overheated refined vegetable oils. Oils labeled as vegetable, canola, soy, corn, and many seed-derived blends are cheap and ubiquitous, but they are high in polyunsaturated fats that oxidize easily when exposed to heat, light, and time. When these oils oxidize, especially during repeated frying, they form aldehydes and other oxidized lipid fragments that are biologically reactive. These toxic fragments can induce systemic oxidative stress and damage mitochondria, including neuronal mitochondria, undermining the neuron's ability to generate energy and maintain synaptic function. Over time, this contributes to neurodegenerative processes and reduced memory performance in plausible mechanistic models. Swap these oils for more stable fats for cooking: extra virgin olive oil at low to moderate heat, avocado oil, or stable animal fats, and reduce consumption of deep-fried foods cooked in aged oil. Also, favor whole food sources of omega-3s, like fatty fish, rather than relying on heavily refined, high omega-6 seed oil exposures. 1. Added sugars and concentrated fructose sources. Sugar, and in particular high levels of fructose as found in many sweetened beverages and processed foods, sits at the top for a reason. Fructose metabolism is different from glucose metabolism. It places an unusual load on liver ATP stores and produces uric acid as a byproduct. Elevated uric acid can promote systemic inflammation and oxidative stress. ATP depletion impairs cells' energy metabolism. In the brain, neurons are energetic workhorses. When energy pathways are stressed, they can't maintain the synaptic plasticity and signaling that underlie memory formation and retrieval. High sugar intake also drives insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, and vascular damage, each of which is associated with poorer cognitive outcomes in population studies. Choose whole fruits instead of fruit juices or sugary snacks. Avoid sugar-sweetened beverages and reduce added sugars in foods and sauces to lower metabolic stress on your brain. Let's unpack a few technical pieces in plain language so you can see how these foods connect biologically to memory loss. First, inflammation is not just swelling you can see. It's a biochemical cascade that alters how brain cells communicate. Repeated inflammatory signals change the way synapses strengthen, the very process of forming memories. Oxidative stress involves molecules that have lost electrons and behave like tiny sparks, damaging membranes, proteins, and DNA in cells. Neurons are vulnerable to those sparks because they use a lot of oxygen and produce more reactive byproducts. Vascular health matters because the brain depends on a steady, precisely regulated blood flow. When small vessel integrity is compromised, parts of the brain get chronically underfunded in oxygen and glucose, and memory circuits are among the first to feel that pinch. Finally, the gut-brain axis ties it all together. Microbes in your gut metabolize compounds, produce signaling molecules, and either detoxify or magnify substances you ingest. Some microbes help degrade oxalates, others modulate inflammation. When the microbiome is out of balance, you may absorb more harmful compounds and send more inflammatory signals to the brain. What you can do practically starting today to reduce these risks? First, cut back on added sugars and sugary drinks. This reduces metabolic stress and lowers uric acid production risk. Second, replace oxidized seed oils and heavily fried foods with stable fats and whole food preparations that reduce exposure to harmful aldehydes. Third, prioritize whole, unprocessed foods over items with phosphate additives, long ingredient lists, or mysterious emulsifiers. Hydration matters. Adequate fluids support vascular function and cellular energetics. Increase potassium-rich foods, bananas, leafy greens, sweet potatoes, which help balance sodium effects on blood pressure. Diversify plant intake and limit unnecessary antibiotics when possible to protect your microbiome diversity. Consider fermented foods and a range of vegetables to support microbial resilience. If oxalate sensitivity is a concern, rotate high oxalate foods and pair them with calcium-rich foods at meals to reduce absorption, but discuss specifics with a clinician. A few vast cautions and clarifications. Much of the evidence linking specific foods to cognitive decline is associative and mechanistic. That means research shows relationships and plausible biological mechanisms, but no single food in isolation is guaranteed to cause memory loss. The harms tend to be cumulative and depend on your overall diet, genetics, sleep, physical activity, cardiovascular health, hydration, and other factors. If you have concerning memory symptoms or conditions like hypertension, metabolic syndrome, or kidney issues, consult a healthcare professional for personalized evaluation. This video is informational and not a substitute for medical advice. To close with 3 immediate, high-impact changes you can implement this week. First, eliminate sugar-sweetened beverages and replace them with water, mineral water, or unsweetened herbal tea. Second, stop buying deep-fried or pre-fried snack foods. Cook with extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, or other stable fats and choose baked or steamed preparations. Third, replace ultra-processed convenience items with whole food options, fresh vegetables, whole fruits, nuts in their simplest form, and minimally processed proteins. Those shifts reduce inflammatory load, protect mitochondrial function, and improve vascular conditions that support memory. If this helped you, like and subscribe for more brain health strategies, and check the description for links to resources that explain these mechanisms in more depth. Remember, these foods may contribute to memory decline over time, but small, consistent changes in diet and lifestyle can reduce risk and support cognitive resilience. If you notice persistent memory problems, please reach out to a qualified healthcare provider for a full evaluation.